Thank you. And thank you all for staying for the very end. I am here to introduce the beta version of Amfar's new PEPFAR Country and Regional Operational Plan database, which we think is going to be a very useful tool for civil society organizations, ministries of health, ministries of finance, and other researchers and academics to better understand PEPFAR's programs and priorities going forward, or in the past and going forward. For those of you who don't know, the country operational plans, or COPs, are documents that look a lot like this. This is an example of Mozambique's from 2013. They're these very long budget documents done at the country level on an annual basis. Overall, across the 8 years that we've put into the database, there's about 63,000 pages worth of documents that we've coded into the database using various scripts to put that data in and make a navigable interface so that we can get down to doing trend analysis and that sort of analysis. So this is the main page of the database. It's available at copsdata.amfar.org. As you can see, there's about $29.5 billion worth of planned funding allocations in the database. The map shows the breakdown by countries, while the bar chart shows breakdowns by strategic area or program area. These charts can, for the most part, all be done proportionately as well, just by hitting the show percentage button. And the two charts below, you're not really seeing the pie chart at the moment, are breakdown by organizational types. So NGOs, faith-based organizations, those sorts of breakdowns. And then if you were to scroll below this, you would get a list of the top 30 implementing partners, those that have received the most funds across all years in the database, at least from the main page. So you can see here the top 6 programs. If you were to click on any of these links, it would take you to detailed information just broken down for these individual implementing partners. But you can also navigate through the database very easily. If you're just interested in, say, programming for Nigeria, you just click it on the map and it takes you to this page, which then shows the same basic set of graphs, but also the new chart on the top left is showing you breakdowns by budget codes per program area. If you look way in the top left, you're looking at, there's a link to view epidemiological data. We have pulled in epi data from UNAIDS, as well as PEPFAR's targets and results from their own dashboard, really just to put some of the spending into context so that it's not just looking like just spending. Now, if you're really interested in if you're a civil society organization that's looking at, say, PMTCT programs, if you click that on the budget, on the chart, you'll get taken to this page, which shows that between 2007 and 2014, we've got about $237 million worth of programming that's been allocated to PMTCT programs in Nigeria. And you get, again, the breakdowns by budget code, as well as the description of the budget code from PEPFAR's glossary on their dashboard. But this is also where the database gets much more detailed, because now if you look at the top implementing partner programs, you also get detailed information on the exact mechanisms that are there. And so clicking on any of these will take you to a page like this. And so this is a mechanism that funded FHI 360. You can see that the mechanism has existed in the database from 2012 to 2014. It was a USAID-funded program. The pie chart is showing the breakdown by budget code within this mechanism, and the bar charts are showing the funding level for this mechanism over time, broken down by program area. Below that, we have the list of subpartners, as well as other information. You can see that this particular mechanism had a significant number of subpartners. And then if you were to click on the PMTCT budget code above, or just scroll down, you get to the detailed information about this program for the PMTCT implementation, so that what this $17.4 million was meant to accomplish, what it was funding for FHI 360. I'm going to show just one more slide on the database itself. If you were to go back to the main Nigeria page and then up where the epidemiological tab was, there's another link for a funding timeline, and that takes you to a page that looks like this. This shows the funding for every mechanism that's been funded in Nigeria between 2007 and 2014, as well as projections on when we expect those mechanisms to end based on the 5-year horizon of mechanisms. These are roughly sorted top to bottom by total overall level of funding, and within each of the mechanisms you can see some gradation that show higher levels of funding and lower levels of funding. So that's the very quick tour of the database. We think it will be useful for civil society organizations. This page in particular was actually requested by National Treasury in South Africa as something that would give them insight into what was going on with the programs and how they would be funded going forward potentially. So what can be done with this database? First, I must say that it cannot be used for cost-effectiveness analysis. It is actually only planned funding. It's not actual expenditure. Expenditure data is separately available in more limited format. It's also only PEPFAR funding at the moment, so it doesn't include global fund, it doesn't include domestic resources, any of that. So if you use it for cost-effectiveness analysis, it will actually return very bad results. But it can start to look at things like this. So this is a graph directly from the database. You can see the link there. And this is comparing funding to NGOs and host country government agencies in Rwanda and South Africa. And you can do these types of comparative analyses for any given countries or any different partners or any of that sort of thinking in the database. And so what we see here in this chart is in South Africa, about 60% or so of funding of all PEPFAR funds in South Africa go to NGOs, while less than 1% is being allocated to host government agencies. While in Rwanda, about 35% of funding is being given directly to host country government agencies for implementation, and declining levels going to NGOs in Rwanda. And we can come up with all sorts of explanations of why this is the case, but it allows us to start asking the question of why different policy priorities and funding priorities in these two different countries. And as I said, if you did this with, say, Haiti, you would get a very different set of graphs. They also have a fair amount of allocations directly to the host country government agencies. It also allows you to ask questions like this. This is not one taken directly from the database, but it is utilizing the data in the database. And this is just looking at the top 50 implementing partners, both overall and in each individual year, and the overall level of funding for those, and whether they're international or local organizations. As you can see, there's been a little change over time in terms of local organizations are creeping up in terms of both overall funding and the number of organizations that are appearing in those top 50. But you can also see that overall, 37 international organizations have received more than 50% of all PEPFAR funds that have been allocated through the country operational plan process over these 8 years. And I think that asks questions about what is the sustainability of this sort of funding profile over time and going forward as we talk more and more about sustainability of programs. But that's really sort of the quick analysis that we've done. We haven't had a whole lot of time to analyze the data at this point. We've mostly been designing the data and cleaning it. And it's far more data than I'm capable of really fully analyzing myself, and it's more data than Amfar is able to analyze. And so we developed this system really to allow others to start engaging with the COPS data in a much more significant manner. So a lot of thank yous go out. Amfar's team has been incredible. Special thanks to Kevin Frost and to Greg Millett, who believed enough in this project when I pitched it to him before I even worked at Amfar. The Forum 1 design team, who has been cleaning up my code and making the database look very, very pretty. A number of those who we consulted in the process, who have given feature requests and ideas that we were able to implement in the database, as well as PEPFAR's team, who has been really trying to reach out more to civil society organizations to be involved in the COP development process going forward. And we hope that this tool is going to prove useful to civil society organizations to be able to engage in a much more substantive manner with that process in future years. And we were partially funded by MacAids for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Questions? Microphone number 3, please introduce yourself.
My name is Kate Powis from Harvard University. Great program. It looks like it has a lot of potential. And you didn't cover this. Will there be an opportunity to identify age groups that are cared for or covered by the funding so that civil society can see that pediatrics is getting this amount of the funding, or adolescents, and people groups. For example, if we're going to achieve 90-90-90, an uncovered area is non-citizens within a country that may or may not have access to services.
So there's limited data that we have in the COPs to do that sort of analysis. We certainly don't have age breakdowns by funding or any of that sort of stuff. We do have a couple of ways to look at it, though. One is the budget codes themselves. There is a budget code looking specifically at funding for OVC programs and that sort of stuff. So if you look at that budget code, it will give you some assessment of what's going on with funding for OVC programs. Pediatric treatment is a separate funding or budget code within the database, so you can look at that as well and the funding for that. You can also, there's the search in the top left that does a word search or keyword search of all the narratives in the database. And so if you search for, say, MSM, you will get a return of all of the mechanisms that have at least mentioned men who have sex with men. We do some mesh searching there, so you will find, I think if you do the search for MSM, about 1,100 different mechanisms that have at least indicated that there's funding for MSM in that program.
Microphone number 3, please.
Hi.
Introduce.
Chris Gordon from NIMH, thank you. Really neat resource. I was thinking that it might be helpful or encouraging for people who might want to use it to help answer questions to have some ballpark idea, like on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is this is what the actuals are, versus 5, or any idea whether this approximates actual spending?
So it depends on the country. We are going to be getting some of that data and putting it into the database in the next phase. It will be in large part just aggregate. We don't have like budget code by budget code data that's available that we know of anyways. Of funding to each country or anything like that, but we have aggregate funding that actually made it into country per quarter, per year that we will be entering into the database.
Thanks.
I'm intuiting that there may be a question from one of the speakers here. A brief question, please. Oh, 2 of the speakers? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I think this is a great initiative, and it's great to see public data, publicly funded work actually get publicly disseminated in terms of the data. I would be very interested in version 2.0, in which you could link not just what was planned, but what was spent, but next to what was spent, what was achieved. Because I think you have the APR and the SAPR that are produced, and that has all the data in there about what each partner has actually achieved in terms of the targets. And being able to link the actual spending to the achievement of the targets, and being able to really kind of do that type of analysis, I think is really, really sorely needed. And then just a second quick point on that, it'd be really interesting to see how this links to other resource tracking exercises like the NASA, the NHA sub-accounts for HIV and other things.
Thank you. Sherry?
Thank you, Yoga, for the presentation. Really interested. We've used your site already, so we're interested in looking then at your new site. Yogesh actually asked the last question is if you're going to do any linkage, so then I only have 2 sort of technical questions. I don't exactly know how PEPFAR funding works. I assume you fund only at the national level? Yes. So do you have any idea how that money would be even budgeted subnationally?
Yeah, so I'll take these sort of in order. In terms of getting the APR and targets sort of data, I don't believe that I have access to any of that. So getting that will depend on it being made available. As far as linkage to, I'm sorry, what was the second?
The national health accounts and the...
the NASA's and all of that. The plans are in place. It will take a while to get there, I think, in terms of what we're able to get and what we're able to incorporate in. Certainly we want to add as much data to this over time as is possible. And I already lost
The
it.
last question was just in terms of if you have a lot of knowledge, is even for budgeting, if it's done at the
subnational
subnational level. Yeah.
So unfortunately, the COPs don't address that directly. You can attempt to sort of backtrack it and find it out by doing keyword searches for, say, Western Cape in South Africa and see what sort of mechanisms at least reference that they're doing work there. But the budget data in the COP document certainly does not go to that level of detail.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Very interesting data set. Wonderful to see it here. Please join me to give a round of applause to our terrific speakers this